Let me start off this video with saying spoiler alert for Murder Drones, especially episode 7. Glitch Productions just released the 7th episode of Murder Drones on their YouTube channel, and I'm using that release as an excuse to work with one of the indie animation series I haven't gotten around to yet. That being No, that wasn't it. The Amazing what was it? Murder Drones, that's the one. And though I struggled with what to turn these characters into today, I settled on a topic I've never worked with before. That being dragons. So let's take a journey into this fantasy world and see what Murder Drones characters would look like as fantastical beasts. Let's create some chaos!
I'm not gonna lie, trying to keep track of all these creatures is more difficult than I expected. So I've taken to documenting every beast I come across in my travels. Hopefully this will help me distinguish which beasts may be useful companions and which ones are out for my blood. One of the first beasts I came across when I arrived in this world was a dragon I discovered in an icy tundra that I've taken to calling the volatile emerald Spitfire. As I was taking in my surroundings, I noticed the skeletons of humans and beasts alike with icicles hanging off of their bones, and as such assumed this dragon may have been the last of its kind, which I would later learn wasn't the case. As I was taking in the field of corpses, the monster flew overhead. It flew in an odd and erratic pattern, as if its wings and the ability to fly were a new concept for it. Though it struggled to remain in a straight line, it was doing a good job staying in the air. That was until it recoiled sideways, as if hit by some unseen force, and spiraled to the ground, crashing a little bit away from me. Though the cold bit through my clothing, curiosity got the better of me, and I went to observe it closer. The beast didn't look like what I was expecting a dragon to. Its scales and plating had an almost metallic sheen to them, while its wings and tail were more organic and bony. It had a light purple fur surrounding its neck, arms, and legs, and a mane of darker purple hair that blew in the harsh icy wind. Despite the metallic texturing, the dragon was completely organic, and I wondered if the texture could have been a survival mechanism to make the plating seem tougher than it was. Somewhat in the same vein, the end of the beast's tails looked like a creature by itself, with several glowing eyes and a split down the middle that made it appear like the tail itself had a mouth. Whether the tail was a conscious part of the dragon or merely a trick to dissuade predators was not something I wanted to find out. As mentioned before, I later learned that this dragon was part of a larger species, albeit with a few unique quirks. For one, despite being from the same species, the volatile emerald Spitfire was the only one that had wings and a tail that looked like a face, as I described before. This particular dragon could also shoot bright green fireballs from its mouth, hence the name Volatile Emerald Spitfire, something that I learned the others from its species couldn't. Additionally, the volatile emerald Spitfire was far more aggressive than any of the other dragons, very easily becoming angry and standoffish before ultimately calming down to a more vulnerable state. However, the most interesting part about this creature was its unpredictable nature. There seemed to be certain dragons that it got along with quite well at times, while other times it nearly tried to rip the heads off of those same dragons. In spite of all this, those dragons still stuck by its side and showed no ill will towards its violent outbreaks.
And we have our first dragon video of the channel. I was kind of nervous going into this one because, as I've explained in live streams, dragons, beasts, and mechanical stuff are the three things I have the least experience in drawing, and it's where in my art skill I feel the least comfortable. So going into this, I'm like, ooh, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but overall I'm very happy with the result. Turning something mechanical into something organic actually proved to be a very interesting challenge, because I wanted to get the different features of it, like the top half of the head was like the visor, while the bottom half was the mouth, and then there were the different mix between white and black metal plating on all the characters in Murder Drones, and just trying to fit that all together was very interesting. And for Uzi's dragon, I was originally going to do it with a like an energy beam, but I settled for fire instead. But I had it spitting green flames as a reference to the ray gun that Uzi had in the first episode of the show. And after I finished drawing it and everything else and went on to writing, I feel like I should have made it something Absolute Solver related, since that's really like the overarching thing of murder drones for Uzi's character. And so I kind of worked it into the story a little bit, where it's like, oh, the dragon was flying well until it reacted like something unseen hit it, as a kind of thing where it's like, oh, this is where the Absolute Solver takes over. And I'm realizing I didn't explain this in the story. I turned the Absolute Solver into more like a parasitic kind of creature that like can infect dragons, like almost a virus or a disease, which I did not explain in the story, so I apologize for that. So there's your context, although I don't know if it matters. And then I also had it at the very end where it's like, oh, it gets along really well with some dragons, but then it tries to almost kill them on others, as a kind of like, oh, hey, there's this weird unexplained mood swing. It's because, as the narrator doesn't know, but the other dragons do know, it's like, hey, not really in control some of the time, so it's cool, we forgive her. But other than that, let's take a look at the final drawing of the volatile Emerald Spitfire.
The next dragon I came across confused me when I first saw it. It landed next to the volatile Emerald Spitfire, as I was first observing it from a distance when it crashed to the ground. It looked very similar in appearance to said Spitfire, and I believe that I was wrong about it being the last of its kind, which, as I've already established, I was, but this was not the instance that proved that. Upon further inspection, the dragon that landed beside the volatile Emerald Spitfire had a few similarities in its appearance, but also just enough differences to make me question if I was observing two distinct species. The metallic murder claw had the same bright metallic sheen on its body's plating like the volatile Emerald Spitfire. The underside of the creature also had similar black plating, though there was this repeating pattern of black plates and pale yellow plates that seemed to resemble the pattern of caution tape, if that's even a thing in this world. The metallic murder claw's tail also doesn't have a possibly false face as the first dragon's tail did. Instead, this one ended in a stinger like a scorpion. As with the volatile Emerald Spitfire, I'm not eager to find out if the metallic Murderclaw's tail is filled with venom or not. Finally, the metallic Murderclaw has a crown of yellow stones on its head, the purpose of which was not immediately apparent to me. The metallic Murderclaw landed next to the volatile Emerald Spitfire, and at first I believed it might have been hunting its prey. The similarities between the two could have been used by the metallic Murderclaw to lure its prey into a trap, thinking it's a friendly dragon. The second dragon lifted its claw high in the air, and I braced myself for it to strike the killing blow. But to my surprise, the dragon gently placed its claw on the other's body and leaned its head down and rested it on top of the unconscious dragon, as if to protect it. The metallic murder claw stayed that way, resting on the unconscious volatile Emerald Spitfire until the latter dragon opened its eyes once more. It sluggishly tried to get back to its feet, and after faltering and staggering a little, like a drunkard trying to maintain his balance, it managed to weakly stand back up. The metallic murder claw supported the other dragon as it tried to hold itself up, still woozy from the unexplainable hit it took moments before. The two dragons flew off together, the metallic murder claw taking to it much easier than the volatile Emerald Spitfire was, even doing playful loops around its recovering companion in an effort to lift the mood. They flew off into the distance, and I nearly lost them as they were swallowed by the dense snowfall and whipping winds, when a massive black hole opened up right between them.
As I went further into this episode, especially with this drawing in particular, I realized that maybe confining murder drones to one topic might not have been the best idea, or just like a very narrow topic like dragons. Some of y'all even suggested venomizing the murder drones, which I wanted to do, but as I was working on the first one, I realized that it was really more or less just gonna be the same drawing 3 times over. But because all of the characters stem from the same base design, so to speak, with a couple of differences in like hairstyle, eye color, and stuff like that, it was very hard to create two dragons between Uzi and N that were different, but also still followed the same rough character design, if that makes sense. And so I went through and really just changed up small details. I gave this dragon a better mane and a tuft of beigeish fur around its neck. As I mentioned, I switched up the tail to end in a scorpion-like stinger for where N and V keep the nanite serum. I also made the texture of the wings the same as the body because N and V's wings are metallic, whereas Uzi's are made almost of like bone and organic material. So it's not my favorite piece, but I think I did a good job switching it up just enough to be a different dragon from the first one I did. Overall, I wish this pose had a little more movement to it. Like, and I meant to have N like leaning in, bending down more, kind of like hunting, sort of like on the prowl. And it just, he's too far up, so it's just like he's just standing in a neutral position. And finally, with the background for this one, I tried something a little different for the cave, opting for a more scratchier and quicker line art to give the illusion of detail in the stones, and then going in with that a little later and applying my usual texturing and shading to it. But I just wanted to see what the line art would look like if it was less like clean and more like quick and scratchy, just like giving it a little less time to formulate, or a little less stuff to work with in terms of formulation. And I think it turned out really well. From a distance, it definitely looks very good. It is a little close. It's in the middle ground, so you can definitely still see the scratchy lines, which is okay. I think the blending itself is enough to mask it, but I don't know. I'd like to experiment more with this kind of style of rendering background details more in the future. But let's take a look at our dragon version of Serial Designation N, the Metallic Murder Claw. A video of me editing the video you're watching inside of the video you're watching? That's crazy. Things just got real crazy in here. But you know what's not crazy is that you can get all of these pictures as posters on my Teespring store down in the description below. All right, back to the video. Wah!
Both dragons were sent flying in opposite directions due to the blast from the black hole. For what felt like an eternity, nothing happened. I stood frozen from more than just the blizzard around me, just staring at the void that opened up in the sky. It was as mesmerizing as it was harrowing. Electricity began spewing out of the emptiness as a snake-like dragon emerged from the inside. Although it shared some similarities with the metallic murder claw and the volatile emerald spitfire, this dragon was completely different. The new dragon was not only longer and more snake-like in its appearance and movements, it also appeared to be two different types of dragons in one. The front half of the dragon was nothing I hadn't already seen before in my short time in this tundra, with the metallic sheen on its scales, the yellow eyes, albeit these ones glowed, but the back half of the dragon was scaly and a mixture of red and brown patches, almost as if the back half of the dragon was decaying, and the front half of the dragon had merely grafted the carcass of another dragon onto it. For what reason, I didn't know. The arms even had two hands connected to the same arm on each side. The hands that had matched the back half were limp and flapped in the wind, leaving the hands from the front half protruding from them like sleeves. Other noticeable differences were these spindly, spider-like appendages that protruded from the length of the front half of the creature's body every so often, as well as tentacles that came out of the back half. The whole body twisted and rotated as if all the parts and limbs weren't properly connected. The creature's head fell like it was weighted and the dragon was having a hard time keeping it up. As a result, the dragon's head was able to rotate in an unnatural 360 degrees. Eventually, both the volatile Emerald Spitfire and the metallic Murderclaw recovered from the blast and bolted toward this newcomer with a fury I hadn't witnessed before. There was a rivalry between the three dragons that I didn't understand, but it was clear that this decaying zombie-looking dragon had the upper hand. With its extra limbs and twisting body, Black Hole Dragon was able to defend and attack the other two simultaneously. It utilized its spindly legs to strike at the two dragons while using its tentacles to restrain them and toss them away. The two dragons continued to fight a losing battle for a long time, growing weaker and weaker as the time went on. Eventually, the dragon grabbed both of the other beasts and threw them to the ground. Only this time, neither of them got up immediately and returned to the fight. The Voidbringer, as I've come to call this horrifying monstrosity, summoned another black hole and went through it. The hole was about to close when the volatile Emerald Spitfire struggled to its feet, spread its wings, and disappeared into the black hole, leaving the metallic Murderclaw passed out in the snow.
Despite really struggling how I was going to turn Sin into a dragon, this by far is my favorite piece. I love the movement of it, the unnatural twisting of the head in relations to its body, and the null void that the Absolute Solver summons with the electricity spouting out. It is so good. It's one of those ones where I'm like, if I had to choose a poster to buy, this would be a contender. It was really fun to design this one because although I feel like I could have made it a little more mangled and twisted in the rotation of the dragon's body, it was so cool to come up, like, work in the parts of Sin and the Absolute Solver into this dragon while still keeping it similar but different from the other two. Like, the spindly spider legs, I don't really know what to call them, but like the spider appendages really worked well. Like, even though it could fly like a snake, I feel like it would use those legs to scurry across the ground like Sin does. And having the spoiler alert, by the way, and having the double hands coming out of the wrist for when the episode 7 reveal, spoilers again, where or Sin has grafted Tessa onto her own body and there's just like dangling human limbs coming off of her. I thought that was really cool. And the original plan was to have it a mix of a dragon and a human, but I didn't really know how that would work other than just like human carcass parts, which would look really weird and messed up kind of. So I opted to go with like another dragon, another like oriental type dragon, almost like Sin or the Voidbringer was shedding its skin like a snake would, and then just the carcass, not really carcass, but the old skin of the previous dragon was just still clinging onto it. And I also made another version that I'll put in the end where I made it more less clean, to put like little patchy spots on all the dragons to like simulate blood and decay and all that kind of stuff. So let me know which one you like better down in the comments below. But let's take a look at our Sin dragon, the Voidbringer. If nothing else, this video probably has some of my best background work in it, especially Uzi's dragon and Sin's dragon. I love how the pieces turned out. And if you want more of this type of content, comment down below what you want me to turn into dragons next, and what other indie animation series you would like me to work with. And if you don't want to wait for that kind of content, you can always go back to some of my older indie animation videos where I venomized the Amazing Digital Circus, turned lackadaisy characters into zombies, or redeemed Has-Been Hotel sinners. 2 of those will be on the side, and the 3rd one will be in the description. But thank you all so much for watching today. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to hit the like and subscribe button. My name is KyngPin, and I will see you all next time. Take care, everybody.